Boy, Arlene's hoe has gotten a workout today. It sure has come in handy. The reason why when I travel places that I borrow a hoe is because I checked in Lowe's about what it costs to buy a hoe. $38.99. $38.99 for a hoe at Lowe's. Besides that, Southwest Airlines will not permit me to board with a hoe. So I just borrow one everywhere I go. I want to begin the class session by telling you how much I appreciate getting to be here again. It really is a joy to go all over the country. I've been in 22 states with this ministry and meet so many wonderful people. And those who have a very doomsday attitude about the church in our present time just really need to get around and visit with the brethren. The Lord's church is a bright and beautiful family and has a great future. And I am real proud of this church. I am so thankful that I've had a chance to get to know some of you, and the visits I've had here have always caused me to be uplifted when I've left. Thank you are two words that are woefully inadequate to express to you how I feel as I leave here tonight. I want you to define commitment. Somebody give it a shot. Surely 2 or 3 of you, if you were asked what's commitment, what would you say?
Promise.
Promise, okay.
Loyalty.
Loyalty, promises, loyalty. Honesty. Okay. Integrity. Okay. Whenever we make a commitment, that's really important. Because really, our character is on the line because we've made this promise, this commitment. Now, just as a quick review, the reason why we're talking about this tonight is that this is one of the 6 common characteristics that researchers found in a quarter of a century of research as they interviewed and researched 14,000 families all over the world. They found that among them, there were 6 things that were distinguishing characteristics that distinguished healthy, strong families from families that were struggling. Commitment is one of those keys. It's one of those special characteristics of strong, healthy, happy families. Sometimes, the best way to define a concept or a word is to use an example. I want to introduce you to a couple of people. Kyle Masterson grew up in the Hartville, Ohio church. I knew him when he was a little pipsqueak, and I watched him grow up. In middle school at Marlington High School in Stark County, Ohio, he developed an interest in running. An interest I do not share with him. But boy, did he ever come to enjoy that experience. He graduated from Marlington High School in 2011, and he was a very distinguishable long-distance runner in the state of Ohio. He had this crazy notion that he wanted to become exceptional among long-distance runners. He got on the internet and he researched this place in Alamosa, Colorado, called Adams State University. Among the long-distance running community, that's like Mecca. Adams State University is in a very high elevation, in a high desert part of the mid-southern section of Colorado. So he left the Canton, Ohio area, and he attended school out there. And he attended school for 6 years out there, receiving both a bachelor's degree and a master's degree. And he was on their long-distance running program. As a matter of fact, his father-in-law is like the king of coaches in long distance running in the world. If you're in that community and you heard Kyle's father-in-law's name, you knew who he was. During the 6 years that he was a student at Adams State University, he never missed a practice. There were 11 practices every week. 4 of the 11 were at 6 in the morning. He had some physical issues. He had 2 surgeries, major surgeries, on his hamstrings, and each required 6 months of rehabilitation. He chose to get paid less while he was trying to work, go to school, and become an exceptional runner. He got paid less and chose that as a pro athlete while attending school so that he could train twice a day instead of just once a day. He traveled to meets all over the world. He would do things that other runners did not do. You probably know of a lot of long-distance runners who run with earbuds. He doesn't do that. And his reasoning for that is, I want to hear my lungs. I want to hear my heart. He's that committed to being as exceptional as he possibly can. Most pro runners run 95 to 105 miles a week. Kyle ran 125 to 145 miles every week at high altitude. He admitted to me he slept at a lot of social gatherings. When he participated in a 50K, I didn't say 5K, I said 50K, in Romania. He was the number 1 of all 6 United States participants in that run. And in that run, he set a USA record for the fastest 50K. Kyle was deeply committed to his long distance running. And it was obvious in his lifestyle. It affected what he ate, when he slept, how much he slept. He was committed to being the best long-distance runner he could possibly be. He has a bright future now as an athletic director because of his commitment to long-distance running. I want to introduce you to Miss Betty. Miss Betty and Jim were married for 49 years. Of the 49 years, Jim was in the wheelchair 35 of those 49 years. He had muscular dystrophy. He had to have 24/7 care for the last 12 years of his life. He had several heart attacks, 6 stents, a pacemaker, a defibrillator, and adding to his problems, he had Lewy body dementia the last 2 years. Miss Betty was by his side every step of the way. When he was often in the hospital, she lived at the hospital, and the only time she was away was she went to school. And she taught high school English in Weirton, West Virginia, at Weir High School. She slept at the hospital. Then in the morning when she could get up, she took a shower, and then she went to the high school and she taught. And then she came directly back to the hospital, spent all the time she could with her husband, ministered to him, slept there again, got up, took a shower, and went back to the school. That's commitment in marriage. As a matter of fact, it's because of her I have this hoe. August of 21, she posted on Facebook at the 1-year anniversary of Jim's passing. And it was a touching video and one of the more touching Facebook posts I've ever read. Whenever she posted that, she had a Facebook friend that I've never met say this, quote, "Yes, she is a good woman. She hoed her row all the way to the end." I thought, that's it. That's what I can use to encourage those people who are now widowed, who have been saddened by the horrific loss they've experienced and are struggling with being that one person that's left behind. Take pride in the fact that you hoed your row all the way to the end. Not everybody does that, but a widowed person has proven that they did that. That takes commitment. Whenever we're committed to something, we're dedicated to it. It means a lot to us, and we are really devoted. We are all in. And that's what we need to have in regard to our families. And it starts with the commitment of a man and a woman in a marriage relationship. Twice in the ceremony, we typically hear this phrase, "Until death do us part." Now think about the commitments that we sometimes make. We sign a contract and maybe we create a partnership. And in that contract, we have made a commitment to respond in the way that is dictated in that contract. And there are consequences if we don't. But sometimes contracts are broken. Legal issues follow as a result of that. Then there is the marriage contract. The marriage contract is an until death do us part commitment. But I want to stop for a moment and do a shout out to single parents. There's not just what we typically refer to as nuclear families, mom, dad, and the kids. There are also single parent families. And we need to make sure that we recognize them, and we support them, and we encourage them, and we honor them. Since I've started this ministry, the most inspiring people I've met are younger men and younger women who have lost their spouses and have had to embrace single parenting after the death of their spouse. I wish I could take you to Salina, Tennessee to visit with Emily Moss, who when she was 34 years old, she was awakened one morning by her 36-year-old husband having a heart attack. And she pulled him off the bed because she had to have a hard surface. She administered CPR. She called 911. He was taken to the hospital, and he died. They had a little girl, about 4 or 5 years old. Her name is Evie. To this day, Emily is a single parent, and Evie is with her side. I could go to East Tennessee and introduce you to Carla Cass. Carla's father was a preacher, but this one Sunday, he needed a substitute. So he asked his son-in-law, Carla's husband. And so Carla's husband that Sunday morning took his Bible, put it onto his motorcycle, and headed out to the church building, which was about a 45-minute commute. And on the way there was a teenager in a truck who pulled out in front of Carla's husband, and he died. And she's left behind with 3 children. Carla is an amazing Christian woman. She is a single parent, a single mother And she's done a fabulous job. It has taken a tremendous amount of commitment. Families need commitment. And that commitment needs to start with the adults in that family. And if there's two, and that family has been built on that marriage, those two people need to be exemplary in how they are all in every way they can in regard to the value and the welfare of that family. In Genesis chapter 2, we read the story about Adam and Eve. And when Adam was introduced to Eve. Now I want to ask you a question from your previous study of the story of the beginning there in Genesis chapter 2. Does anybody remember what Adam experienced prior to the time that God brought Eve to him? Loneliness. Okay, now how was that loneliness really displayed to him in a very in-your-face sort of way? What did he experience prior to the time that God brought Eve to him? Oh, those animals, a parade. Isn't it nice to go to a parade? In a parade, there are animals. So here's the first ever parade. Adam is invited, and I can just imagine God saying, Adam, there's a log, you sit there. Here's some popcorn, and here's a Coke, okay? Now the critters are going to pass by, and as they pass by, I want you to name them. Whatever, Adam, you name them, that's what we're going to call them. And so, giraffe, long-necked giraffe, hippopotamus, mosquito. I still don't understand that one. Why do we have to have them? And then, at the end of that experience, it says, out of the ground, the Lord God formed every beast of the field, every bird of the air, and brought them to Adam to see what he would call them. And whatever Adam called every living creature, that was its name. So Adam gave names to all the cattle, to the birds of the air, to every beast of the field. But for Adam, this is tear-jerking. Imagine being Adam. Imagine what he's just been through. There are living creatures in his presence. He's been hanging out with living creatures in his presence. But for Adam, there was not found a helper comparable to him. I wonder about his mental and emotional state at that point. I wonder about his blood pressure, his heart rate. I wonder about the impact of what he's just experienced. This old boy is A-L-O-N-E. Now, things are going to get better, but he doesn't know that, not yet. And so the story continues in verse 21. The Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall on Adam, first surgery, and he slept. And then God took one of the ribs and closed up the flesh in its place, and the rib which the Lord God had taken from man, he made a woman, and he brought her to the man. Now, the next verse, I think it's highly unlikely that Adam said it the way us men read it in the public assembly. This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man. Nah, I can't buy that. No way. He's been asleep. Now he's waking up. And now there's this drop-dead, gorgeous female who, by the way, now she's naked. And she is being brought to him. Whoa, man! This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She should be called woman. Whoa, man, because she was, oh, wow. She was taken out of man. He had to be thrilled. What do you figure is his heart rate now? Yeah, what do you figure is his blood pressure now? He is excited. This is awesome. Off the chart. Yes, sir. off the chart. Do you feel that way about your mate? If you're sitting in this room now and you're married, do you feel that way about your mate? Do you feel that way about the blessing that you are enjoying that we call marriage? I often refer to it as an unparalleled blessing. There's nothing like it. There's no human blessing like the blessing of marriage. Now, I will admit to you, I did not appreciate my marriage nearly as much as I should have. But loss has caused me to deepen my appreciation beyond words for the blessing that we can enjoy in this world, sharing life with someone that we have a lifetime commitment with. There's nothing like that. If there is ever any human relationship worthy of an all-in, until death do us part commitment, it's the marriage. If you have anything less than that in your marriage in its present phase, let me encourage you to change that, to sit down together and make a deep and abiding commitment, to grow stronger in your commitment and your appreciation for the relationship of marriage. Do you know what some of us would give to have a second bite of the marital apple? But for some of us, it may never happen. In Matthew chapter 19, centuries later, whenever these Pharisees are interested in breaking the relationship, Jesus makes it a point of taking them all the way back to the very beginning. Not to the law of Moses, but even back further than that. Have you not read that he who made them at the beginning made them male and female, and for this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother, his security, his peace, his home. And he's going to take a deep dive into a very risky relationship. Human relationships are risky. Whenever we participate in a human relationship, it is risky because the only people in human relationships are flawed human beings. People can change. Circumstances can have an impact on people way beyond what we think. And there's an ebb and a flow in relationships that we have to recognize. But you leave your father and mother and all that security, you're joined or glued to his wife to the point that the two become one flesh. And then it says, therefore what God has joined together, let not man separate. There's no other human relationship described like this. This is an amazing thing. I love the writings of Dr. James Dobson. I remember reading a section of a book he wrote where he was talking about the typical process of going from single to married. And he brought this issue up. He said, stop and think about this. Prior to the time that you marry that person, they are a stranger in your life for years previous to that. A stranger, a total stranger. Now, there are rare exceptions. Waterford and Mary Bledsoe were members of the Hartville Church in Hartville, Ohio. And they used to brag that they often slept together before they got married. They bragged about that. They had a picture of both of them when they were in baby. A bassinet, two babies, Waterford and Mary Bledsoe. They knew one another their whole lives. That's a rare exception. For years previous to the time that you're married, this person is typically a stranger. You do not even know that they exist. James Dobson says, going from stranger to a one-flesh relationship, he uses a word for that. And I like the word he used. He said, that's phenomenal. That is phenomenal. That you can go from having a stranger in your life that you don't know existed to you being in this intimate, lifetime commitment of a one-flesh relationship. I read on the internet, so I know this is true. There are over 8 billion people on planet Earth. sometimes up to the point of 8.5 billion people. How many people are in your marriage? It's just you and one other person. If that doesn't help you appreciate how special that your marriage is, I don't know what could. That relationship deserves a lifetime commitment. I mean the kind of commitment that when, like for instance with Betty, her husband gets muscular dystrophy and ends up in a wheelchair for 12 years, you're going to stick with that person every step of the way. I met a couple up in Medina, Ohio, and in that particular situation, these two people had both lost their spouses, both nearly 40-year marriages. And they end up meeting one another, and they start dating, and it started with a coffee date at McDonald's. And then he went off to Arkansas to visit with family. And as he was out in Arkansas to visit with family, she gets diagnosed with cancer, and she knows what's going to happen. She's going to lose him. She's saddened by that reality. At least that was in her mind. He comes back from Arkansas, and as she takes those treatments and becomes weakened, and as she loses all of her hair and she pukes her guts out, guess who's with her every step of the way? And guess who married her? That same man. That's commitment in a human relationship. A family can't be a strong family unless the adults, or the adult, if it's a single person, is deeply committed to the welfare of that family unit. Displaying that kind of commitment in our life and in our lifestyle, and making it a point of talking about that as well as exemplifying that by our behaviors. We need to sell that same concept to any child that's either born into or adopted into that relationship. Vince Lombardi, who probably wasn't highly beloved by Lions fans while he was the coach of the Packers, had a philosophy. And in that philosophy, it was all about exceptionalism, about making it a point to be devoted to excelling to the best of our ability in something that's of value in our life. There's a trophy for the Super Bowl, and it bears his name, the Lombardi Trophy. He had a deep commitment to being the best coach he could possibly be and taking players and making them the best team they could possibly be. The stability and strength of a family is a byproduct of an iron-willed determination to make it work. In our marriages and in our families, we have got to cultivate this iron-willed commitment that we're going to make this family work no matter what happens in this family. Family life, as we talked about this morning, can be stressful, can lead to conflict, and create challenges that are really unfathomable until we begin to experience them. But we can negotiate all of that if we are deeply committed to the welfare of the whole family. The concept could be expressed this way: we is greater than me. And when we have that philosophy, our marriages and our families can grow in strength and survive any storm that they experience in life. I hope that as you think about these 6 characteristics, that they can help you in your marriage if you're married, in a future marriage if you're not yet married, or I hope that they will help you from this day forward as you try to apply them to the special blessing of marriage and family. We're going to offer an invitation in case somebody needs to respond. Do you need the prayers of the church? Do you need the brothers and sisters in your church family to know the fact that you're struggling? It's okay to not be okay. There's a whole bunch of us that are not okay. So you can be just joining my club of the not okay people. There's nothing to be ashamed of. What's a shame is that we don't talk more transparently about what's going on in our lives and get the help we need. So this evening, if you need to come and request the prayers of the church, feel free to do that. And if you want to be baptized into Christ and start a new life, don't hesitate to do that. If you're the only one in your family that chooses to become a Christian, become a Christian. First and foremost, if we love the Lord more than anybody else and anything else, and we choose to become a Christian and live consistent with that commitment, no matter who else is in our family, it's going to have an influence on our family that we made that decision. Don't be as concerned about the results as it is your participation in the philosophy of an all-out commitment to the Lord Jesus Christ. There's going to be a positive consequence that comes from that, whether it's to your wife, to your husband, or to your children. If you need to become a Christian, make that choice tonight if you need to. Thank you for letting me be here. Let's stand and let's sing.